We installed 1,000 square feet of 5-inch red oak flooring in the kitchen, living room, dining area, and foyer and a hallway of this house they worked on. It was installed over 30-pound felt paper and was stapled every 8 inches. The floor was allowed to acclimate for 3 weeks, and the moisture content was 9 to 11% when installed, the exact same range as the subfloor. The floor was then stained finished with 2 coats of oil-based poly. And then what happened? In the summertime, it began to significantly cup. Moisture readings were taken. Whole house moisture readings were taken. The basement at the time had a relative humidity of 55 to 53 versus the upstairs. And we could not come up with a good theory, so they wanted to know why this floor was cupping, so they called the NWFA.
National Wood Flooring Association?
Excellent. And so they had a guy come out there, and he didn't know what was going on either. I think we're going to know what's going on here. And so the floor flattened out when it got to be the heating season again, but then when the summer came along again, it's cupped again. So he wants to know what to do. So they hired a second inspector to say that, to find out what was going on. And they still haven't gotten a satisfactory answer. And this is the part I want to read most, Justin. Thanks. Love the podcast. Patrick is doing a great job filling in for the MIA, Justin Fink.
I'm no longer MIA.
Yeah.
So what's going on with this guy's floor?
Well,
I think I know a few things.
Yeah. So, as much as we've been talking about my wet basement, I actually have sort of like the exact opposite thing happened throughout my entire house. And
when you say exact opposite, what do you mean?
So
the basement's cupping?
Every single floorboard, I've got red oak, but stripped, 2 1/4 inch. Every single board is crowned.
So it's
reverse
raised
cupped.
in the center.
Yeah, raised in the center, which was a huge pain in the butt when I decided to sand out the floors when I took out that wall to expand the bedroom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I ended up going at it with a palm sander and a just
that's
to
the
try
right
to get
tool
down,
for the job.
Yeah, to get that last little bit in between each board. And man, was that labor intensive. And I think what we're talking about essentially is, the differential in moisture that's coming up either from the basement or, in my case, maybe my basement was drier than the rest of my house. I don't really know. It's also possible that when the floor was initially put down, they sanded it too soon, and it had cupped a little bit.
I think that's the case with your floor.
Yeah, and
because it doesn't usually
possible.
go the way, other way.
Yeah, it doesn't usually, but it is possible.
So what Matt is alluding to is we think that because his basement has a higher relative humidity than the rest of his house, the bottom side of the flooring, right, is taking on moisture, which makes it grow, and then makes the edges turn up.
That's what it should do.
That's what it should
do. If your basement is wetter than the conditioned part of the living area,
yes.
then it should be cupping.
And I think the flooring was installed too wet to begin with. 12% is pretty high. The recommended is like 7.5% for wood floors to go in most of the country. It varies.
Yeah, Maryland's really humid though.
Well, this is also he says 1,000 square feet of red oak. It accumulated for 3 weeks, and he wrote accumulated. Sorry, acclimated for 3 weeks, and that the moisture content in the floor matched the moisture content of the house, which is fine. Like, you're supposed to let it acclimate. That's good. But what he doesn't say here is, was the HVAC system on? Because a lot of times people do this and they go, well, I made it match, so what's the problem? The problem is you want to turn on the heat or AC and then make it match. Or
install it at a lower moisture content.
Right.
Don't let it take on water, which I think is what happened.
Because if everything was at 9 to 11% and you installed it and then you go, all right, cool, we're all finished. Let's button up the drywall, put on the AC or the heat, and now suddenly you're at a different moisture content, you're screwed. So this is why, like, you'll hear a lot of contractors say they won't even touch these, the finish flooring and trim and stuff until after the whole heating and cooling system's been commissioned.
And if you have a new
operational.
house, you got a lot of construction moisture to be dealing with. So, I mean, like, you're talking hundreds of pounds of water in the materials. So you need to let that get dried out.
Right. It gets rained on all the time while you're working on it, and then you close the front door and you decide that it's just dry now. No, you gotta dry it out.
The other thing is people don't realize how much you have to nail wider flooring, right? So I forget what he said.
Yeah, it feels ridiculous.
Every 8 inches.
It feels ridiculous.
Yeah.
So 8 inches is what you want to use for 2¼ inch flooring, right? So you want the same amount of nails for a square foot of 2-inch flooring that you would for 8-inch flooring, which means that when you start to get wider boards, their spacing has to get much tighter, and that would help restrain some of that movement potentially caused by the underside taking on water. So for a 5-inch red oak board, you should be stapling every 3 or 4 inches, according to Howard Brickman, who is the country's top consultant on wood flooring.
Yeah.
I met Howard.
So like that's and like I said, 6 to 8 inches for 2¼ 3-inch flooring should be every 5 or 6. 4-inch should be 4 inches. 5-inch should be 3 to 4 inches. 6-inch board should be every 3 inches. 7-inch boards every 2 to 3 inches. So that is a ton of stapling or fastening, and people just don't do it. So.
Yeah. Also, the Hardwood Flooring Association, they also did say that there will be more cupping expected on wider boards,
Sure.
and they also mentioned that there'll be a difference if it's plain sawn versus
rift sawn.
quarter
Yeah,
sawn.
huge. I mean, the wider you go, the more you got to pick stable species, and you got to pick a stable cut of wood.
I understand why people like the wide plank flooring, but I think it is inherently more problematic than narrower strips.
Or get the wide plank, but then face nail it. I mean, that's why a lot of those old floors were done that way.
Yeah.
Because then it won't cup, and it looks good.
Yep.
Except you got like dust bunnies building up in the. Oh my gosh! No thanks.
Yeah, I love it.
what I grew up
wide?
with.
Yeah, how wide can you get? What were you at? Like 12 inches, 18,
Nah,
24?
It was probably like
97?
8-inch. I was in Vermont last year, and this place, I mean, it was wider than my foot was long. I think they were probably like 14-inch wide.
I swear,
looks
when
great.
the
It was insane.
The bedroom I grew up in, one whole room, one board.
You never told us you grew up in a tree stump.
Yeah.
All right.